debt, depending on who you listen to and what circles you run in, this is either a dirty word to be avoided at all costs, or it's a tool, perhaps even a magical tool to help you live the life you want with riches and wealth beyond your wildest dreams, and that would be unattainable by any other way other than having debt. So, where is the truth in this? What are the nuances around debt? In this video, I want to unpack debt for you in a way you probably haven't heard before to make you consider and really help you reflect on whether or not this is going to help you get closer to your dreams or further away. My name is Jason Wojo. I run a company called Lifeonaire. Our whole mission is to help overworked business owners reclaim their lives so they can have the life they want to live without sacrificing business success along the way. We believe you can have both a great business and a great life. So, back to debt. So, debt, the first thing you got to recognize is it's very nuanced in terms of it's a tool. And with any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. If you have a hammer, you can hit somebody over the head with it and hurt somebody severely, or you could build a school, right? And so it's understanding the nuances about how to use this tool that'll serve you best as you decide to move forward. So the first thing is let's kind of get clear on what debt means and what you're doing when you take on debt. Debt is simply an exchange of your present time for the experience or purchase or possession of something that you don't have the money for so you can enjoy it now. So said another way, this basically means like, hey, I want this car. I don't have enough money for it right now. And so I am willing to trade you, the lender, part of my income, which by the way is part of my time, for the experience of that car right now. So you're pulling it forward into the present. So let me give you an illustration of this. This is a great metaphor that I learned from Steve Cook, one of my mentors. And so let's say you're going to take out a mortgage, okay? And I'll use a mortgage as an example because everyone's familiar with how this works. Now, I am not against mortgages. I want you to understand I'm using this simply as an example. So when you take out a mortgage, you are typically approved for a 30-year term. A typical mortgage is 30 years, and you're typically approved for 30% or roughly about a third of your income that can go towards your mortgage. And so what you are saying when you take out a mortgage is you are saying, hey, lender, I am willing to give you a third of my working hours, which is a third of your income, right? For the next 30 years for the privilege to live in this house. So let me repeat that one more time. When you take out a mortgage, you are exchanging your current time for the experience of that house. So you're saying, lender, I'm willing to give you a third of all my working hours for the next 30 years for the privilege of living in this house. Now, again, I'm not against mortgages, but I want you to understand what you are very literally saying. And so this means if you have an 8-hour workday, you're working till, right, your late morning break for just for living in your house. And so the reason this is important to understand is because whenever you're trading something for a future result, you are making an exchange that is cumulative. And so what I mean by that is this: you have your mortgage, and then you have a car loan. And maybe that takes you a couple hours per day to pay. And then you have student loans, and then you have credit card loans. And very quickly, you can see and you can understand how this loan debt has added up so that you have very minimal choices and you've kind of backed yourself into a corner financially. And maybe this is the reason why you can't start the business and you can't leave the job, or you can't step back or go to another company because you'd make less money because you have these debt payments. Now, by the way, this comes with zero judgment, because I've had tons and tons of debt. In fact, at one point in my life, I had almost $90,000 of credit card debt. And it sounds really, sounds great until it wasn't. I was flipping houses on credit cards, using those to pay contractors, using them for materials, all these other kinds of things. And there's plenty of stupid stuff in there too. But what I recognized is, these are the things that really keep you held back in the position you're in, and kind of create a series of, handcuffs for you in terms of making decisions. So let me show you what some of these numbers look like in real life right now. So according to Lending Tree, the average credit card debt for card holders in Q1 of 2025 is $7,321. So that is our credit card debt. Now, according to Lending Tree, we also have an average new car loan of $41,720. Our house mortgage average here, this is based on trading economics, is $379,210. And now student loans, according to Search Labs, is $41,618 for a grand total of $469,929. So check this out. Almost a $500,000 of average debt. Now, by the way, I don't know if you caught this. This is consumer debt. This is not even business debt. So we haven't even gotten to business debt yet. And so when you see these numbers, like, what do you feel? What do you think? What are you looking at? And I'll tell you this, the reality is we're almost a $500,000 in debt by the time, in many cases, we're in our early 30s. And now we spend the rest of our lives trying to dig out of that. And this is why we can't do the things we want to do, because we have to work to satisfy these debt payments. Back when I had that almost $90,000 of credit card debt, I had interest payments of over $2,000 a month just for the credit cards. That's not even anything else. And so I want you to think about this, and you wonder how you find yourself in this situation. And here's how it normally happens: is like, let's even rewind. You're in college and you meet your college sweetheart and you fall in love, and it's gonna be a fairy tale life. And so you decide to get engaged. Well, you have a college, you're in college, and so you don't have a job, and so you get a credit card. And by the way, they give out credit cards really easily these days, right? And you get a credit card and you put the ring on the credit card, right? And then you set a wedding. And in fact, this is going to be a once in a lifetime thing, right? A once in a lifetime thing, 50% of the time at least. And so you want a great wedding, and an average wedding, you're going to spend 20, $30,000 plus very, very, very easily. And now you don't have that money either. So what do you do? Well, guess what? There are companies that specifically finance weddings, which is absolutely insane if you think about it, because if half of marriages end in divorce, imagine still paying, making payments on your financed wedding when you're divorced. That'd be tough, right? And so you finance the wedding, and then you have an amazing wedding, and that's not even including, we got all the stuff that goes along with that. And then what happens after the wedding is like, well, okay, we're going to go on a honeymoon, of course, right? Because this is a once in a lifetime thing, and we're going to create memories that are going to, we're going to just live an amazing life. And so you go on that honeymoon, and you drop another 10 grand. And then, okay, what's after that is you're like, well, we need somewhere to live. And so, I don't know what self-respecting couple, some sarcasm there, wouldn't just buy a house. And so you go buy a house and you apply for that. And now you get the new job, but you're not going to show up to the job in the beater. You're going to get the Beamer, because you want to look successful and you want people to have the right image of you. And so you go out and get the car loan. And here you are, like, all of this has happened, mid 30s, and you're $500,000 in debt or close to it. And now you have to fight your way out of that hole the rest of your life. And so this is where I say you got to really be careful about this, because this can impact your entire life unless you get out of it. Now, I also want to say that certainly some expenses and some debt may be acceptable, and maybe even something that you willingly go into. Let's say, for instance, you want to be a physician, and that is your dream. And guess what? You're not going to escape without six figures of student loan debt. But if that's what you want to do, and that's part of your vision, and this has been your life goal, then go ahead. I'm not telling you not to take out debt. I'm telling you just to understand the debt and to make sure that those decisions are getting you closer to the vision you want, that ideal life, if you want. Or if you want to be an engineer or an architect and you have to get a degree, like, that's very different than going to get a communications degree or a liberal arts degree. Very, very different. And so, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just got to make sure those decisions are moving you forward, and you're really careful with making those things. Like, you have to ask yourself, like, is this investment going to pay off for me in a big way? And I think when you have that filter, you got to really just recognize that not all decisions are going to move you in that direction, and those maybe perhaps are the ones you can cut back on or get rid of, right? And so if you find yourself struggling to have the freedom to make the choices you want, it could be because you've enslaved yourself to debt accidentally. Like, nobody goes here like intentionally, and nobody wakes up, hey, one day I want to be $500,000 in debt and then work the rest of my life to pay it off. Like, that's not true. I mean, I literally know people in their 50s right now that are still paying student loans. And so this is very real. This is very real. And this is, again, I'm not going to demonize debt because like we're, I believe in personal choice, I believe in autonomy and free agency, but at the same time sometimes we get into these things that we don't fully acknowledge and understand the choices we made. I knew a girl once who her mom encouraged her to put her college on credit cards, and she didn't know any better, right? And then it's bankruptcy a few years later, right? And so we just don't know these things. So the other thing I want to help you realize is like not only does debt really limit your choices sometimes when you have those debt payments, but also there's a non-financial component to debt, which is like, how do you feel? How does this affect what you think about? How much you sleep at night? I can tell you when I had all that debt, and at my peak, I had about $650,000 of debt, which could be a lot for some of you listening. It could be, and that's not business debt, by the way. It could be a lot for some of you, or it could feel like nothing. Some of you might right now might could have tens of millions of dollars of debt. I don't know. The numbers aren't really relevant, but it's like how it affects your life that's relevant. Like that's the salient feature here. That's the most important thing to consider. When I had all the credit card debt, there were many nights where I lost sleep trying to figure out how I'm gonna, rob Peter to pay Paul to cover these expenses. I still got my business I'm trying to run over here, and I got this extra money coming out of my account. And like the second I put it in, it's gone the next day because I'm paying all these bills. And so you got to recognize that part of it as well. Like if you're spending all your time worrying about it, then perhaps this is something you don't listen, despite what other people might say, despite people saying like, oh, you got to have a good debt to be in business, which by the way is a lie. I'll talk about that in a second. Like, don't believe somebody else's model of how you should live your life. You have to make this decision for yourself. And if you are the person who's going to, stress out if you owe somebody 10 bucks, then don't take on debt regardless of what the world says. Now, if you're somebody that can have tens of millions of dollars worth of debt, and those people are out there, and not lose a wink of sleep, then and it's going to get you closer to your dreams, then go for it. I'm not here to say what's right or wrong at all. Please don't take it that way. But rather, just I want you to consider and make sure you're making the best decision possible for you, not for anybody else, so that you can live the life you want to live. You can have the vision you want to live and move forward with that without feeling like the pressure of meeting a certain criteria. So I also mentioned a moment ago that good debt is the only way to get wealthy. That is just not true. We have a lot of people in Lifeonaire, for instance. We do a lot of deals together. There's businesses that are funded. There's joint venture partnerships. There's all kinds of ways to get people's investments, to get people investing together that doesn't require money. For instance, there's a storage deal I was involved in where the guy who found the deal and he set up the management company. He didn't have a single penny of money in that deal, but and we pulled this thing down. I don't know, it was $1 million, and he didn't have a single penny in it. And he had half of the equity because the numbers worked for the rest of the financial investors. And so you don't need, he did not have to go out and take out a bank loan for that because other people had money. And so don't feel like, the only way to get the things you want is through debt, because that's just not true. There's so many more creative ways that I've seen over and over again that work reliably and predictably, but you just have to be aware of them. You have to search for those things other than sometimes, like, honestly, it's the lazy way to just go take out a loan. So just look at that for yourself. The other thing I'll say about debt is that, certainly cutting your expenses is an obvious way to cut down debt. But I'll also say this, there is a limited dilution of an effect that occurs like after you pay down debt. Like there's a cap in that. Like you only cut so much. Okay. So there's a law of diminishing returns in effect where, I'm not going to ask you to live on zero or live on 10 grand a year or 50 grand a year. Even some places that's could be really tough. Like things are expensive these days. And so while yes, I think you should really take a look at your expenses, at some point you got to put your focus on making more money, because making more money is essentially almost unlimited. You can always make more money, but you can only cut so much. So the one recommendation I would have for that, though, and I've said this before, is think of this as a game of football. Right now in football, you have your offense and your defense. And people say defense wins games, but that's not true, because if both teams have a great defense, it's 0-0. Nobody wins, right? So I would encourage you to focus on your defense first, which is how you manage your finances, how you steward your finances, how you oversee your expenses and your household kind of expenditures. But then you really got to work on the offense. You got to learn how to make more money. And the good news is like the skills that you'll learn throughout business stack upon each other, and they continue to compound. So you'll get better and better and better at this. But you got to like really put the time on that as well. It's not all about just saving and paying down debt, because that is not the winning formula either. But I would encourage you to look at that first before you move to add an income, because what ends up happening is if you don't work on the defense first and you start making more money, all you do is spend it. Like, and I've seen that over and over again, where I'll show you something like this. Somebody's income goes up like this, where like this doesn't matter. And all of a sudden their expenses go like this, right? And they just mirror that, or sometimes they even go up more. And so the key here is really you keep your expenses here, or you go to here, and then your income goes up at the same time. Now this delta, now the change between here is that much more exaggerated, and that can really accelerate you to freedom. So in closing, I hope this made sense for you. I hope you have a more in-depth understanding, a better grasp on what debt really means. And then simply, again, no right or wrong at all. But I hope you can see how this can help you make better decisions, moving you towards your vision, and to use debt, if you decide to, as a tool rather than something that hurts you. So if you like this video, if you want to learn more about how to manage your money, how to manage your business, how to make more money, how to enjoy the life you want, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.